Hello, and welcome to another episode of the CamerataCast. This is your host, Andres Marquez, as always, and I am here today with the second fellow that we've had from across the pond on our cast. This is Jordan, the host of the Missinglink podcast slash radio show, among other notable occupations. Introduce
Hello.
yourself. Oh, you were about to do that. My bad.
Yeah, no worries. Hi there. I'm Missinglink, otherwise known as Jordan, and I run a global underground house music podcast, um, among many other things. Yeah.
Yeah, first off, I wanted to give you some major congratulations. I just saw recently that your your podcast is seventh in Ireland when it comes to music commentary podcasts on Apple, at least. So that's pretty big, dude. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I know, which is frightening because well, I'm supposed to be underground, but really, when you're top 10, and I've been top 10 for a short while in a lot of different countries, which is amazing. Um, but yeah, it's sort of like, am I underground anymore? Can I really call myself underground? You know,
Oh,
I
that's a
hope
good
so.
question. It does underground specifically refer to because I've heard that word a lot in regards to different art scenes and in regards to political scenes as well. Does underground specifically refer to the amount of followers you have, or to the mass of the people who listen or experience your work?
I think so. I think underground, I think to a lot of people means that it is something that's the niche, something that's new per se, and
Hmm.
maybe something that not everyone knows about. Um, which I still think I'm very much there, and not everyone knows about my podcast. Um, But and so yeah, and you kind of compare that to like in the UK we have Radio One, BBC Radio One, and that is
Hmm.
not underground. That's very mainstream. So that's the contrast to that. Yeah, if that
Totally
helps.
understandable. Is it bad to not be underground? I can think of pros and cons for each kind of situation. What is your take on that?
Um, for me to not be yeah, it would be bad for me not to be underground. Yeah, in my opinion, just for me, because that's something I enjoy. I enjoy being underground, and I enjoy experiencing what the underground has to offer. And I don't really get any excitement or any real, I don't know, nothing interests me in the mainstream areas.
I get you. That's pretty cool, honestly. I really dig that sort of. I'm gonna turn my gain up real fast.
No worries.
Well, I dig that mindset. I dig that you want to have you want to be within the niche, as it were. And I do agree that the mainstream is pretty much as diluted as possible in most cases when it comes to the artistic output of mainstream artists. Um, I guess it really depends on what you mean by mainstream, because okay, for one thing, there are a lot of mainstream artists that I listen to that would be considered pretty outside the mainstream of actual pop music. Like I'm talking about Snarky Puppy. Like they're huge in the jazz scene. Like you talk to any jazz artist and they're like, "Oh yeah, Snarky Puppy is like they're the big dudes." And so is Corey Henry, so is Jacob Collier. But they're not like huge. They're not like fucking Mariah Carey status. So I feel like there are strata to the mainstream world, and I do enjoy some of the mainstream uh, offerings that there are, and others I feel are far more diluted and far more corporate in aspect. But another thing, I did want to say that I again I admire that you want to keep to that underground, to those roots, and that's not something I see in a lot of artists. Honestly, I see that there is a willingness to, you know. to want to become known. And that's totally, you know, it's totally fair. It's something that a lot of people want because of the material success and stability that comes with being known in most cases.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. I mean, um I definitely listen to some stuff that probably I would consider mainstream, but aren't mainstream like you say to the rest of people. Um, but I think I'm particularly snobbish about genres that I'm really, really into and the stuff that I feature.
Mhm.
So I'm really snobbish about like what's underground in certain areas. But then when it comes to like, I'm driving in the car, I just want to bang on some drum and bass, and it'll be like the most basic bitch, drum and bass artist or something, because it's great to drive to, and I don't really care. And people go, "Well, you're not like underground about that." It's like, no, I don't care. And honestly, it would be really difficult to be super, super snobbish and super underground about every single genre. Yeah, so I think in my opinion, it has its a time and place. It's completely subjective.
Totally. I like that. There is a duality there. So, oh my gosh, we were just talking before we started recording. We were like, "Oh, this isn't gonna be like in depth or serious at all." And just like 1 minute in, we start talking about the philosophy of mainstream versus underground existence.
Yeah, it's
I
it's great. I'm loving it. Straight to the like brass tacks. I'm
love it.
loving it.
Same here. Um, I mean, we can definitely talk about it more, but I did want to kind of ask you, for people who haven't heard of Jordan yet and who haven't heard of your radio show, Missing Link. I kind of wanted to ask about like the origins of that show. Like, how did you get to creating this production?
So I've told this story before, and it's it's sort of awkward for me to say because really the show is very selfish. It was basically I wanted to listen to music I really liked out and about, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the car, going to work, doing my thing. And I wanted to listen like an uninterrupted mix, of my favorite tunes, without really much talking or anything. And I'd done mixes before and put them up on like Mixcloud or like SoundCloud and stuff, but they're not really that great, in terms of especially Mixcloud and SoundCloud. I didn't want to have to pay for like the unlimited stuff,
Mm-hmm.
to put up like a bunch of hour-long mixes and stuff. So I decided to make a podcast almost for myself, just so I could get it on the Apple Podcasts app, so I could use the Apple Podcast app to listen to my own mixes. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to go to that extent, I may as well just spruce it up and make it into something that I can put out there and see if anyone else wants to have a listen into it as well. And sure enough, sure enough, other people want to listen to it. So, still today, I play music for me, and stuff that I listen to, and I listen to my own, podcast on repeat all week. Um, so yeah, it's it's very selfish reasons, and other people just seem to vibe with it.
Honestly, dude, I dig that. It's like I don't find that. I mean, it definitely has your interests in mind. This production of yours, it definitely came from a place of your own interests. But like, isn't that most, artistic sort of expressions and productions? It's like, I mean, I severely I am definitely in doubt of the person, the artist who creates solely for other people and not for their own expression, or
That's true.
who broadcasts other people without having their own opinions and emotions in mind. Like, it's definitely good to you know be there for other people, to be there for your community and for the people that you like. But like when it comes to artistic expression, like how do you not include your own interests and opinions and emotions in that? So it's I don't think that's selfish, honestly. Like most things come from a lens of, oh, this is what I'd like to do. So it's like I dig it. I dig that this was something that started out as just you wanting to be able to experience your favorite music like on loop. And then it just branched into this big like we said, you're like number 7 in Ireland right now. That's huge. Like again, barring the fact that mainstream success is definitely a downer in some cases. It's just really cool to see how, you know, how it's grown.
Yeah, it's pretty weird, especially since I haven't really done any advertisement. Like I think it was a couple of months ago, I got this message from this guy, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, I really like the podcast." I always reply like, "Yo, amazing, thank you so much. Glad you're enjoying it." And he's like, "Yeah, I play it at my mate's bar in Vietnam every day." So every day, at some random bar in Vietnam, there's my weird underground house music podcast playing, and that to me is just kind of strange, since I've never done any advertisement in Vietnam. I don't know anyone in Vietnam, so I don't really know how they've managed to find it out there.
That's rad though. It's like I don't know. I the world is so interconnected at this point
Yeah.
that it feels weird when like because we have for the Camerata, we've gotten a few people who like enjoy our content who are not from this country. We have people in Israel who enjoy our content. We have people I've gotten to work with artists in Australia who just found us somehow. And like we created like artistic collaborations together. So it's like it's weird knowing that there's very little chance that you might meet these people in in the real world, as it were. But I think it's still like an exhilarating feeling to know that the things that you like to do and the collaborations you like making, the artistic creations you like to put out there are reaching people that are so far from you in terms of distance. I love that feeling.
Yeah, me too. It is very odd, isn't it? It's like, yeah, you don't realize that's the way things work. That like more than one person, aka yourself, likes a particular thing until you figure out that actually a fair few people like it as well. So yeah, it is a very strange feeling. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, it's a I mean, not to be too self-promotional, but I have a little Let's Play channel with, my band, Big Hat Logan. We have a channel called Big Hats Play.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but, like, it's a very small channel in terms of YouTube, um how do you say in terms of the bigger channels that we watch, we're small fries. um but it's so cool because sometimes we'll have random people comment on these videos that we don't do promotion for outside of Instagram. Like sometimes we'll just say, hey, we put this up on Instagram, but mostly it's band stuff. But in any case, like we'll get comments like, oh, you guys are awesome, like it's so cool to hear you guys talk about this stuff and to see you play my favorite games. And it's like, where did you even come from? Like, how did you appear? How did this appear in front of you? It's such a bewildering thing. The interconnectedness of the world is definitely detrimental in some cases, but it also feels really nice to know that people are enjoying the things that we make. And that we might not ever meet them, we might not ever know them, but it's still nice to know that they're taking enjoyment out of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really, really strange world. It's a world that it's a world that can only happen right now. Like, this sort of thing could never have happened in the 60s or 70s, where
Oh yeah.
like, you know, and yeah, like what are you gonna do? Send your YouTube video out via post? I don't know. You know, that's it's just yeah, it's a very much a 21st century world. It's very
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, I was actually reading about how the interconnectedness of the world started, just expanding, during the late 90s and then into the early 2000s. There's this book by this awesome writer named Matt Alt. It's a book called Pure Invention, and it's about how Japanese culture sort of um, expanded into the West and became part of our mainstream, and part of the culture that influences our mainstream. And it's really cool to see like all of the different things that came from collaborations between people who are like more than 1,000 miles away in a pre-internet age, and how these collaborations between inventors and between people who are kind of like entering this new world of the internet, how that sort of formed the networks that would eventually become the internet today. Um, I don't know. I found it fascinating. Like back in the 2000s when the internet was still beginning to like, it was still a hatchling, and like the infrastructure was so raw. Everything about it felt so like Wild Westy. Those are days I barely remember because I'm only 24, but I still have a weird nostalgia for them, like a nostalgia for something I barely remember.
Oh yeah, sure. Like, I mean, I don't remember either because I'm like 22 now, but I was lucky enough to go to CERN, which is the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, Geneva, Switzerland, and
Damn.
that's where they have that's where the internet basically started, wasn't it? Like, because they have the Large Hadron Collider is like this huge 7.5 mile diameter particle accelerator, and they have like research stations from one end to the other, and they needed to transmit data between them.
Hmm.
And how they do it is one guy would literally drive from one end to the other, but it would just be like, obviously a super intensive thing just
Yeah.
for, a few ones and zeros and stuff. And so one guy came up with this funny idea of stringing two computers together with a bit of wire and seeing if that works, and designed it. And I saw the original box that they had built this like server out of. It was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's rad. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that the internet started there or for that reason.
Yeah, to connect two campuses, yeah, at CERN. He was an English guy. It was very cool. Very cool.
That's sick.
Yeah, and then I think at some point a bunch of people came together and then formed ICANN, which is the domain registrar. I'm gonna get I could get super technical because this is my background, um, but yeah, it's yeah, meteoric rise in
Mhm.
connected systems.
Speaking of, this is going to be a hard left from where what we were talking about earlier, but
Sure.
you said that this is your background, and I remember also during our chat for the short film, that for the interview that you had for the short film that we had
Mm.
made, that you said that music isn't really the how would you say it's not what you want to be your career path, um, to paraphrase as it were. So I wanted to ask what is it that you do then, if you don't mind me asking? Like what is the what's your occupation?
Sure. So I'm a director of a tech company in London, and we build websites, and server systems, and we do business intelligence as well, using data analytics and stuff like that to track social media for companies, and track behavior and stuff like that. So very data centric. We're starting to use stuff like neural nets and stuff like that to try and build some AI models to try and predict what people want to buy and stuff like that. So very cool stuff. And that's what I do. I think we'll be probably 8 employees by the end of the year, something like that. So
Dude, no shit. That's awesome. That's really huge. I didn't know that.
no, pretty much no one does. No, no one does. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we work with companies like Amazon and all sorts of people. So yeah, it's a very cool experience. I started the company in 2019 and then started trading really last year, and then this year it's just been mental. I mean, I've only just had a holiday last week in like 2 years, pretty much. So yeah, it's been it's just just been a completely mental time. You know, it's just a bit weird. It's just a bit weird. Going to like you know sort of meetings in London, and everyone's talking about this is the next big thing kind of thing. You could easily go on an ego trip, so I have to make sure that I stay grounded.
Hmm. Still though, that's a major accomplishment, and I'm really happy for you that that can be, the your what do you call it? Your living the your livelihood, as it were.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um no, seriously, that's really rad. Like, I'm hoping that at some point the Camerata can be that sort of thing for me. Again, that's hard though, because I don't want to push this project of mine into the mainstream, since, bring it back to what we were talking about originally.
Mm,
I don't want this to be like a huge, like, Capitol Records company. I don't want this to be like something where artists sort of have to lose a bit of their soul in order to work with us. But I do want this to be a means by which myself and other artists can make a living, like a modest living. Like, I talk about this with everybody, and I believe I've talked about this with you as well.
mm,
It's like nobody I've talked to wants to become rich and famous. Everybody I've talked to wants to have the means to survive off their art, and perhaps like with a little side hustle, like just the time and the money necessary to be able to really enjoy life without having to worry too much about, if, oh, I can't make my rent this week or this month, or what happens if I, get in a minor accident. um that's really what this has been about for a couple of years, and it's like I am very unorganized. i i have very I have poor skills when it comes to being able to really formulate big plans. So it's been kind of tough for me to really envision what the Camerata can be. But it's always inspiring to hear from, folks like you, or like, oh yeah, I got this business and it's kind of the next big thing, or at the very least it's going to be incredibly influential and stuff like that. Um, that's the most inspiring thing. I had a conversation like this with Rebecca Ustrell, the owner and lead operator of Curious Publishing. We talk about them all the time on here. We had her on the podcast as well. Um, but she runs this amazing indie publishing company which puts out beautifully crafted art books and magazines, all featuring the works of different local artists, all featuring interviews and pictures, and it's beautiful, the work that she does, and it's all locally based. It's all within an incredibly tight knit scene, and that is kind of what we want to be, or at least I want us to be. Um, it's something that can really, create a sort of, how do I even say it? Something that's very communal, and can still create enough traction to help artists kind of, you know, push themselves towards their financial slash economic goals. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I went on off of that because, again, like what I said, your story is very inspiring to have that sort of that leverage you've got right now.
yeah, I appreciate it. I see you guys as almost like in the future as like the Adult Swim of music, if you understand what I mean.
I that is so nice, first of all, and that's I've never heard that comparison, or I've never heard that projection, but I am so appreciative of that because I grew up on Adult Swim. I grew up on all of the musicians that they supported, all of the creators that they would support. Um, I don't know, that right there, just that one sentence is already giving me big ideas and helping me, like, feel more attached to this, please go on, I'm sorry. That was just very nice of you, so please go on.
No, no, it's true. Like, they're a great example of how you can have something that's commercially viable and something that's really cool. Like, I think a lot of people forget that you can have something that makes money and is really cool. You don't have to have, terrible copy and paste songs or copy and paste, TV shows or whatever in this context, only because that's just what makes money. It's not true. It's what probably makes the most money, but you can still make enough money.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, if we look at stuff like, Rick and Morty, which would never, ever, ever, ever be on like a mainstream uh, TV network, and now
Sure.
it's huge, right?
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. If you give a platform to someone that no one else will, then one day it's just going to be huge. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I that's what we're trying to do, not to say that, like, not to be so disparaging as to say that nobody else would give, the artists we work with a platform. I totally get what you mean, but, I believe that, like, the people we work with are definitely, you know, not just commercially viable, because that's not really the thing that we think of first, but also just, like, incredibly talented.
Mm,
Uh, I am so lucky to be able to create and to promote artists who are all extremely varied in their skills, but also have that connecting thread of being able to of just being able to elicit emotions, strong emotions through their work. Um, and another thing, that's something that I've definitely wanted to focus on more. I had just talked about this with some friends yesterday. We had a little house party in my place. It was a beautiful little thing.
nice.
But we were talking about there's this podcast called "Make Art, Not Content." I'm not sure if you've heard of that before,
Okay.
um,
No.
but that is the premise. The premise is all in the title. It's like just create things that are emotionally expressive, create things that reveal your emotions in the most honest way, and do don't create primarily for algorithms. Don't create primarily for, you know, corporate agendas. Um and it just struck me so hard. Like, the title alone, that's what dragged me in. Make art, not content. And it's like, why haven't I thought of this before? That's what the Camerata had been focusing on almost all of, the pandemic age. For like more than a year, we were just focusing on promotion and just putting out social media stuff. But I listened to that and I was like, we have to focus more on actual creative shit, not just like algorithm shit. And that's one of the main driving forces that I've had, just really pushing, you know, working with others and working with myself to create truly expressive work without regard, or at least with as little regard possible, to the algorithms that guide the Instagram slash social media infrastructure.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm just checking it out now.
Yeah, I think it's like 6, 7 episodes. Haven't listened to all of it yet, but you can find it on most platforms, I believe.
It's very cool. Although, what is funny is the fact that the Make Art Not Content podcast is technically content, which is quite interesting of an oxymoron. But
That is definitely a catch 22.
yeah, yeah. Although it doesn't matter, but it's funny. Um, yeah, I think honestly, like if you just obsess about the not the content, if you obsess about what you love and you just put it out there, uh, it will happen, right?
course.
if you make something that's just amazing, then chances are the people are gonna really like it as well.
Mhm. And in regards to like a podcast being content, that's definitely a valid point. But I also like to think that there are varying levels of content, and that's why I said to be as with as little regard as possible to the algorithm, because I believe that podcasts like this one, like Make Art Not Content, I believe that kind of content can serve the same sort of educational and inspirational purpose as like a television show or perhaps like a very well written YouTube mini doc. That's like not to be so self-aggrandizing, but I do believe that there are tiers to content's, emotional and intellectual worth. And that's why I want to focus more on stuff like this podcast because the main goal of this is to have meaningful conversations with local and indie artists and to provide, you know, material with which people can become inspired through, to provide um, sort of like a stimulation through conversation. Like, oh, that's a good idea that person had, or this person's origin story is so like it's very uplifting. Um, I want to focus more on that kind of stuff and less on just posting about artists like 200 words in a caption and then just leaving it there and hoping enough people like it. That's all cool and stuff, and it's always to try and promote people, but it's not very effortful. It's not very creative, and is why I want to try and delve away from that more.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. There are like layers to which the content or stuff is produced. Obviously, like I'm on a certain layer on a podcast. Um, I think it all comes down to like the reasons for doing something. Like a really mainstream, like Joe Rogan's podcast would be like
Hmm.
just to make money, right?
Yeah.
That's his income, that kind of thing. So he makes that just to make money. I make mine because I love music and I want to put it out there. Um, so I think yeah, I think it's down to the reasons why you want to do something and put something out there. I think that's the layer that ends up being on. And you can always tell too. You can always tell, if something is just for like the monetary value, like just for the money. You can always tell like it's super, I don't know, just like super polished and there's like an ad roll every 3 minutes,
Yeah.
product placements, stuff like that, Could you imagine if I did my podcast and it was like, brought to you by like Coca-Cola or something? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the world's biggest underground podcast brought to you by RC Cola.
Literally. Yeah. Literally, like, underground and brought to you by doesn't really work.
I will
Unless it
say though, oh my bad. Were you gonna go
No,
on?
no, go for it, mate.
I will say though that I think there is, in some regards, in many regards, honestly, I think there's room for being sponsored at some levels,
Mm.
as long as it's like more responsible sort of sponsorships. Because like at a certain point, if you want to be able to have the infrastructure to reach more people, if you want to be able to like offer occupations to other folks who want to work with you, and you don't want to just like, hey, can you do this work for free for me? I think sponsorships are a good way to go, because it's very hard to raise that money yourself. In many cases, it's very hard to raise that money through crowdfunding and whatnot. Um, I just again, there's a responsible way to behave about that kind of stuff, and there are definitely companies that are far more deserving of being sponsored than the likes of Coca-Cola or ExxonMobil or folks like them. Some of my favorite YouTube creators have sponsorships with you know with how would you say, with companies that are, to my knowledge, not actively destroying the environment or the health of entire societies. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I don't know. That's my thing. It's like make it corporate enough to survive and to be able to employ enough people to have a viable business. And once you go past that limit, it starts becoming more diluted. T-
Yeah, of
Too
course.
diluted.
It's you have to make if you want it to be your thing, it's gotta be commercially viable. Otherwise, you know, you can't run that at a loss. Otherwise, it will die. I think what people forget is that at the end of the day, you can choose who you want to be your sponsor. You know, you don't have to have Raid Shadow Legends as as your sponsor. And anyone that's seen any YouTube video will know who I'm talking about. So,
I
you know, I mean, I got what is this? I need to check this out on my phone right now. I got this because being on Instagram and having like some sort of following means you get every now and again a request or something be yeah. I got okay. So smooth my balls, and they wanted to send me they they wanted to
I
send
got
me.
that same one
Did you get
like a
that same
week
one, yo?
ago from the same creator or from the same profile. That's awesome.
Yo, literally, I was like, wait a second, what is this? And I was tempted just to do it as a laugh, like genuinely as just like not even take the money, but just like just take the piss, just take the absolute piss of their brand. I mean, I was just kind of gobsmacked, to be honest.
I love it. That first of all, like I don't I'm honestly kind of bewildered because I really thought that like it makes sense though because we follow each other, so it makes sense that they would.
Yeah.
Are you getting a noise on your end?
Um.
I'm sorry,
Wait,
I'm getting a
it's
bit
probably because
of.
my phone's near the mic. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Let me put mine away as well.
I'll just throw my phone away. Hopefully that's
Okay.
better.
Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, like it makes sense that we follow each other and that, within a week of 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 me getting that message, which is probably just copy and pasted, that you got it as well from the
Mm.
same people from Smooth My Balls. But like it's weird because you're right, like every 3 or 4 days, I get a message that goes into my requests from somebody I've never met before. I look at their profile picture, looks like either a company or like a stock image of a human. Um, and then it just says, "Hey, we do promotional, posts, $50 for 3 posts, $100 for this many posts," and that kind of shit. It's like or it's like paying for followers, stuff like that. It's like, why? I have deleted so many of these conversations. It
Oh.
is so strange how nobody seems to be picking up the hint that I don't want to do business with these folks.
Yeah, I know, and like, oh god, and it's the comments too. It's the comment bots. Like, I have to
Oh,
delete every day comment bots. And in the music scene, I feel like it's the worst out of every scene. Just the comment bots are just unbearable.
yeah, that's like sometimes that's half of the comments in the posts I make. It's like promoted on blank
Yeah,
or
with a bunch of like fire
awesome
emojis.
DM. Yeah, exactly. It's like three fire emojis, like an explosion emoji, DM me at blank. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
it's the meta game that is being a comment bot. I don't really I don't really understand like that stuff doesn't work. Like I'm in business intelligence. That's what we do,
Mhm.
right? Um it doesn't work. Doing comment bots does not and doing that kind of like fake, you know, follow and unfollow bots and you know, fake followers and all this whatever. It doesn't do anything. And uh, Instagram slash you know Zuckerbook or whatever. You know they don't care. They have like the algorithm that can detect if it's a coffee cup in your photo, but they can't detect that like the guy that's commented like 3 fire emojis on about 5 million accounts. You know, is like
Yeah.
how do they how do they just not figure that out? It's yeah.
It's probably just not a priority.
It probably isn't, because they're thinking, well, it's more stuff, and that equals more money for them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess that must be it. Just I don't know. There's just too much money around.
Mm, that's for sure. I will say though, kind of just on the topic of Raid Shadow Legends, if you had been talking about just taking the piss out of the fucking smooth my balls people. Um,
Yeah.
if you want the best YouTube adverts in the game, please check out Internet Historian. Um,
Oh, I
all
love that guy.
Yes! Oh my god. I am so surprised that he's still sponsored because every advert he does just seems like him just shitting. If not directly shitting on the product, then just using it as like fodder for silly jokes. Um that's like this guy's doing it right. Like again, how is Raid Shadow Legends and Raycon still sponsoring this guy? He
But
is just gone through the roof with his adverts.
think about it this way though, like if it was my brand and I had some guy make like a Christopher Nolan, level production of the ad spot with his like, animations that he does and the
Yeah.
crazy story that he makes. I'd be like, brilliant. I reckon I reckon Internet Historian has single-handedly propped up the entire brand from from his shitty fucking adverts because not gonna lie, that is the number one place where I know of Raid Shadow Legends and Raycon, so it actually does work. They're probably fat stacks, going to
Oh,
Internet Historian and, you know, whoever else does it. I don't know, Cold Ones or whoever else gets sponsored by them.
that's honestly a real fair point. I will say though, I've only seen Raid Shadow Legends in two places other than Internet Historian. That's on JonTron's videos,
Oh yeah.
which I don't really care for anymore. And then just on actual like before vid advertisements, like they'll put like the 60 or the 90-second advert that interrupts the video.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that's those are the only two places I've seen ads for Raid Shadow Legends, honestly. But you're right. It's probably Internet Historian. I don't know what his motives were in creating such beautifully crafted cinematic advertisements. But whatever it was, it probably did have the effect of at least gaining them some major reach. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a good strategy for them. It's like whether or not he's taking the piss out of them, like they're still getting attention.
Yeah, they're getting loads of attention. There's more creative intelligence in his adverts than there is in like the entire of DC Studios right now. You know,
Oh my god. Too
like
true.
it's so true though. I think the only other place I've seen Raid Shadow Legends is on Count Dankula's channel. He gets sponsored quite a lot. The Scottish
Mhm.
guy. Um, Good channel.
I've never actually seen it.
Yeah, he does like a series on absolute mad lads, and he just talks about like crazy people. It's wicked. Yeah.
I'd have to check it out.
You should, man. It's good. It's really good. It's really, really good. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, I'm gonna be winding down the cast at this point. This has been first of all, it's been a beautiful conversation that it went all over the place, and I'm so happy that we touched on everything that we did.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I do want to say we do have one section typically at the end of our casts that I like to do as much as possible, and we just shout out some of our favorite creators in our local scene. Favorite indie creators, favorite creators that we've gotten to work with.
Mm,
Just one or two people or one or two groups that you're like, hey, these folks need some love. Check them out.
wicked. Okay. Okay. Let me have a quick think. Oh, I want to shout out Bandcamp just as a whole because they're doing some great stuff for artists in general. Um, the fact that you can pay more than on the advertised price is wicked. and I want to give a big shout out to Play 4N4, which is a Lithuanian-based record label and radio station, and they have just some of the most amazing underground talent over there in Lithuania. And they put my show out every week. It's just awesome, wicked, um, as well as Guti, as well in Serbia. Really,
Mhm.
really good guy. Andy over in Helsinki now, DJ'd with him a few years ago. Great guy, world music. Need to check out Simac Sound. Um, I think that's about it for now. I don't wanna ream off too many names.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I'll also be shouting out a couple names, a couple artists that I absolutely love. First off, I want to give a big old shout out to Lizzie Styles on Instagram. That is too small for you. Um, they're an amazing artist, and like I had said, I've had only one other artist on the Camerata podcast from England, and that was Lizzie. Lizzie is an artist and student in the London town area. So like check out their work. Amazing illustrations, beautifully expressive, and like very comic book esque, which makes sense because they also have a really cool comic series that they're creating. Very LGBTQ plus oriented, and very like again, I can't stress how awesome her drawings are. Their drawings are, um, just fantastic. I also want to shout out. Uh, I'm sorry, I had a brain fart. My bad. That happens often. Oh God, my brain. I also want to shout out Las Ritas. They're an amazing indie rock band from out of the Palmdale area, and I am so happy that they had asked me to play drums for them on 3 of their recent shows in the past 2 weeks. We played a few shows in Los Angeles, and we also played one out in Palmdale where they're at. Their regular drummer Edgar couldn't make it, so they asked me to sub for him, and it was a ball. All 3 shows were so hopping, and I am so glad that those were the shows that I had. My first shows back in over a year. Thank you again to Las Ritas for giving me that experience and just being awesome dudes.
That
All
sounds
right.
amazing, actually.
Yeah, yeah, it was killer. We played first show back, we played at this little tavern, Ham and Eggs Tavern in downtown LA. Super just like chill. Everybody there was vibing with the music. It was killer. Next show we played was at the Transplants Brewery in Palmdale. Absolutely massive place with a huge crowd. One of the biggest crowds I'd ever played, honestly, and it was like so fucking rad, so surreal. Then our final show we played was at Area 51 in Vernon. Uh, hopefully nobody from there is listening because we don't want to play there again. They're kind of assholes.
Oh
Everybody
no.
who everybody who played there, like all the bands were rad. The promoter was rad. The business itself was sort of rank, honestly. Again,
Oh
they're probably
no.
not going to be listening. Just if you're thinking of throwing a show at Area 51, just be mindful. Be very mindful that they are not the most hospitable of people.
Or just don't.
Good idea. That is also a brilliant idea. I will say though, the space is pretty rad itself. If it had different people operating it, it would be massive. It's like an oasis in this big old sea of industrial buildings. The vibes were cool aside from the folks who ran the joint. Like again, I don't know. That's really the only thing that was off-putting for me. Otherwise, it was such a fucking amazing show.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah,
How's
thank
how are
you.
you guys doing? I've heard in the news over in LA or California in general, you guys having some water issues.
Yeah, that's just something I mean, I'm not sure how tuned in you are to California news, but the worsening climate degradation has made it so that California, which is actually naturally a desert and naturally shouldn't be as green as you see in a lot of
Oh, really?
yeah, it's a desert, and then only the coasts of the SoCal area are naturally wooded. They're chaparral forests. Everything inland is pretty supposed to be pretty dry. So the fact that they're trying to, you know, irrigate a mega city and have been doing so for the past 100 years or so, it's not the most sustainable way to live, and there are actually droughts in California quite often. And the climate crisis is doing no help for that. So you'll hear about really bad droughts pretty often in California, and they're probably only going to get worse unless we have some more responsible stewardship of our environments and some more responsible, how would you say, um, delegation of resources when it comes to the greater Los Angeles area. Until then, it's going to suck.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send some rain from the UK over to you guys.
Please do.
We have more than
Like,
enough.
oh, please, just I don't care how environmentally irresponsible it is. Get me a tanker with like hundreds of gallons. I'll pay whatever the cost.
Well, when the
Oh my
Camerata
god.
becomes really big, you can buy all the water you want.
Yeah, we will be the catalyst for the water wars.
That's it. You can buy a whole lake, Camerata on the beach or something. I don't know.
The Camerata Reservoir.
Yeah.
Oh god. It's good we get to laugh about these things.
Yeah, because if we don't laugh, we'll just cry, so
All right. Well, again, I do have to get going. I got to get ready for an event for my cousin's graduation, which I'm super excited for.
Oh,
He's
wow,
doing
yeah.
quite well in
Congratulations.
life. Yeah, yeah, I'm super happy to see him. But yeah, thank you again so much for being on the cast. And thank you to everybody for listening. This was Jordan Missing Link. And this is Andres Marquez, Camarada Podcast. You know the name, hopefully. Thank you again for listening, and we hope to catch you all on the flip side.